Welcome to Emerald Ash Borer University, coming to you live from my office at Michigan State University. My name is Robin Usborne, and along with my colleagues Anne Marie Nagel from Purdue University, webinar informative. Today we continue our municipal management LLC in Crystal Falls, Michigan. Government to private landowners. The presentation today will cover highlights from a mechanized urban wraps up by explaining the advantages and limitations. Without our presenter, Don graduated with a degree in forestry Department of Natural Resources as a then became the executive director of the company. Don has served as executive and as administrator. Also the executive director of the safety. Questions during this webinar, write them in the chat pod. Don will be responding to questions midway and again at the end. Please stay tuned until the end because we would like to get your feedback and we'll be providing a way that we'd like you to participate in. Well, for those of you needing CEUs, feedback on this webinar as well. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available at www.emeraldashborer. Find the recordings for all previous EAB. Feedback about you. We always want to know. Thank you for attending today, and with that, I'm going to bring up Don's presentation.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Robin. I will jump right into it. I guess from the comments here, I see there's been some volume issues. I guess please let Robin know if you have a problem hearing me. I will jump right in here. This is a project we did in November 2010. And it was done, as Robin said, in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. And it was one of the most interesting projects I've been involved with, and I'll get right into it and talk some more about it as we move along here. It started out with a Wood Education Resource Center grant. Timber Resources is a company that I deal with. Ken Lallemont is the president of it, and our partners on the project were Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. SRI is the nonprofit I work with, Sustainable Resources Institute. Brown Logging and Trucking, Denny Brown is a logger who always had an interest in trying this type of equipment out in an urban situation, and he was really gung-ho about doing this. During this project, he had a reoccurrence of his cancer and actually died shortly after we started this. So even though he started the ball rolling with this, we got other loggers involved. And the city of Beloit, which is south of Madison on the Illinois border, was the initial partner we had in this. And what happened in August of 2010 when we went down to the city of Beloit, the trees they had down there were really not conducive to this type of operation, at least in a large scale. We found several areas that it would work, but we wanted to do a week-long demonstration. So after we went to Beloit, we decided that was not the place we wanted to try this. Anna Healy was somebody that I had worked with in the past on a number of projects, and she said, I think the city of Oak Creek could be perfect for this. So when after that, we went down to Oak Creek and took a look at what they had and decided it was a great opportunity. Oak Creek had the highest infestation of emerald ash borer in Wisconsin at the time. So we decided that it would work well. We were initially thinking of going in the spring of 2011. In talking to Anna and Rebecca with the quarantine and the dormant season, we decided to push it up and do this in November 2010. And in November, what we did was identified the markets for pulpwood and chips. We weren't very concerned about the saw logs. We didn't see a huge volume of saw logs coming out of this project. And we figured once we got those cut, we could go out and market them. So we got the market set up, the trucking and logistics finalized, and on November 7th brought the logging equipment down and started at the Oak Creek City Garage. And the demonstration then took place starting on November 8th. The logistics, Rebecca Lane is a city forester at Oak Creek, and she was just tremendous at organizing this and working with all the entities down there. I basically handled the coordination with the logging end and the volunteers we had from the Forest Service and the DNR and some other agencies. And Rebecca handled everything with the city of Oak Creek and the entities down there. The key partners is Rebecca had meetings with the homeowners, with the businesses. We did some of the tree removal was on city property. Some were, right-of-way trees. Others were in homeowners' yards, and we had the industrial park that we did a lot of the cutting in as well, where they had small woodlots associated with some of the companies down there. And she did all the coordination with the city personnel as well. And all the project partners, this is just giving you an overview here of everybody who was involved in the project. Won't spend a lot of time with this. A key part of this was the radio communication, and we had two different systems. One was radios provided by the city of Oak Creek, and the second was the radios that the logging operation had themselves. And the way it worked is a key concern of mine was the harvester operator, Mark. In order for this to work, he has to be focused on cutting trees and not talking to people and not getting out of the cab. So the idea was to keep him in the cab as much as possible. So what we did is Teresa, who was the forwarder operator, was the buffer. I communicated with her anything that we needed. At times, I would stop Mark and go over and talk to him one-on-one in the cab, but for the most part, everything was relayed through her, and it worked very well. Mark is actually has an engineering degree and tends to have his mind going constantly, and I wanted him thinking about cutting trees and not talking to everybody else, and that worked very well. When you have this type of equipment, you have to keep that operator, the guy cutting and processing the trees, as focused and working non-stop as much as possible. There's enough downtime going between trees, analyzing trees, that you want to make it as easy for him as possible. And then getting into the demonstration. Some of the key players here, Terry Mace is a utilization marketing specialist with the DNR, and Terry helped out immensely with doing the time studies out here and coordinating help from the DNR and from the Forest Service as well. Rebecca Lane, as I mentioned, she's in the middle here with the sunglasses, was just incredible to work with. Her coordination and just planning ahead of time was tremendous. This is myself. Anna Healy from Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection was just tremendous in working with everybody as far as the quarantine, product movement. It was an excellent team that worked together on this project. Teresa was the forwarder operator. This is the piece of equipment we used to get the wood out from where it was cut. She was just incredible with helping to coordinate everything. And then Mark was the processor operator. Equipment we used out here was a Ponzi processor. You can see in this slide right here, this is the cutting head. This hanging down right here, just a point, is the chain off of the cutting bar right here. And this was a stop where Mark had to get out and put the chain back on. This happened maybe 2 or 3 times in a day. If you hit some branches or whatever, the chain will come off, and it just takes a couple minutes to put it back on. And if there's any questions, I'd ask you to throw them out right now just on the setup. Otherwise, I can get right into our operations here where I'm going to go through day by day. So if there isn't any, I can just keep going. And I think I'll stop after each day if there's any questions that are pertinent, or you can save them till the end, either way. So the first day, we were cutting in around the city garage office. We had a Forest Hill Road we went along, a Green Lawn Park, and also a right-of-way along Green Lawn that we went to. This is a 26-inch ash that was in the yard of the recycling center. This is showing it cut off and coming down. And then this is cutting the bowl down after the branches have been cut off. This from the previous slide, trying to get my pointer to work here, is where that second branch is cut right here. So the idea was cut the branches off, make it more manageable, easier to control the tree than to cut the whole tree down. This arm right here, this entire arm can reach out about 30 feet. The farther you go out, the less control you have. So you don't necessarily want to go out 30 feet if you want to try to control anything off of it. Here's cutting the whole top off. It all depended on what he had for room, whether he'd cut branches off or cut the top off of the tree. This is showing it coming down, and there's different types of processors. There's a fixed head processor where you can basically grab the tree and move with it. This is called a dangle head. Right here, this whole area is a dangle head where you don't have a lot of control, but a skilled operator, he can pull the head back, or he can push it this way or that way to actually have a lot of control. So these guys that have been doing it for years are very skilled at doing different things. And typically when they operate out in the woods, they are not going to cut the top off of trees or cut branches off. They're cutting the whole tree down. So this is a little outside of what they typically do, but just from the skill they have developed out in the woods, Mark I was very impressed with how easily he adapted to doing different things like this. And here it is coming down and on the ground. And then this was going to Forest Hill Avenue, where we had 17 trees that needed to be taken down. You can see again here, where's my pointer? The trees right down the lane here. There was probably about anywhere from 100 to 150 feet between them. This is the only area where we got into a little issue, I'll say, is the equipment moved a lot faster than the city personnel expected. We had the city truck out ahead here running interference. There wasn't a lot of traffic on this road, but the closer we got to downtown area, the more traffic we got. And our equipment actually moved so quick that we got out sometimes, waiting on the city people to get out there to to provide interference for us. So it was a good learning experience we had on this one. We learned and we adjusted for the rest of the week, and this was really the only issue we had. We sat down at the end of the day and said, here's what we need to do different in the future. I'll just back up here a minute. This is the fastest we did. I think these 17 trees we did in less than half an hour. It was, and I got the times later on, but I think it was something like 15 seconds to cut down and process the tree. We were just processing them to get them out of there, usually cutting them in 2 or 3 pieces so they could be piled on the forwarder to get them out of there. And then this is in a park area. We had a landing area. You can see the logs and pulpwood piled right here, and then we had the stuff to be chipped right here. And this is the forwarder. We piled it up as high as possible. This is the first time that Teresa had ever transported, what we'd call biomass. And this going down the street, in where we started out, where we were taking it down the street back to the city garage. This was all on site right here, so she really didn't have to go very far with this, but going down the street with brush hanging out like this, that's where we went along with her, make sure that no cars or anything got hit when she was going down the street. So here's what we figured out for the day. A total of 59 trees of substance were cut down. You see down here in the, I get my pointer working here. We did have 35 more right-of-way trees that average just under 6 inches in diameter that I didn't count in this. You can see the stump diameters up here. The hazards by the garage, these 7 trees we cut down were right along a power line. Most of them had a little lean away from it. A couple didn't, where they had to go in and cut the tops off. This in the office area, it was away from the buildings. There was no hazards. By the recycling plant, we had traffic actually coming in and out as people were recycling. So we did have some delays there where we'd hold up if we were right next to the road, but for the most part, everything was dropped away from where any traffic was. Right here, this was the one where I said he was doing them so fast. You can see the diameter is smaller here, and traffic was the main issue, and it wasn't a real big issue there. And at the park, there were trees off. It was November. There weren't any people out at the park, so it's very minor issues there. I guess if there isn't any questions coming in, I'll just continue on, and maybe at the end will be the best time to do questions. The second day, we went out on more of a rural road. Elm Road, I kept calling it Nightmare on Elm Street, but they kept correcting me and telling me it was Elm Road, not Elm Street. We started out with cutting down four dead elm. This one tree right here, this was one of 3 trees that Mark said he was not comfortable cutting down. He couldn't reach up high enough or to control. He could reach up, but where he'd have to cut it off, he wasn't comfortable with it. So this is one of the trees we bypassed. And this, you can see Rebecca, when she was marking these trees, put the diameter at dBH on all these trees. So this is a 23-inch green ash right here. And this was a stretch along the road. You'll see the next slide will give you a little different view. The one that was just cut down was right in here, and then we cut this whole strip. You can see we got a guy right here doing measurements on it, just seeing what was cut out, what was utilized. We've got the forwarder right here loading up with the product and the tops on it. We also did cut down a couple trees in the back of the yard here. Most of these trees were right-of-way trees, but we did cut down 2 for the homeowner right here as well. And we had a total of 9 trees right in this strip here. This was, we had a few right-of-way trees here, but this was mainly yard trees that were taken out, a total of 18 trees. I think 6 of them were technically right-of-way trees. This was a top taken out, and this was the only time the top branch here just touched this, and the wire bounced a little bit. Sorry, I didn't have the pointer. Right here, hit this wire a little bit, it bounced, didn't have any damage on it. There's the top going down. And these are more trees. You can see the smaller diameters right here, that 8-inch, 9-inch dBH taken out right here. Took out several trees in this yard for this homeowner. And right here, cutting the top off another tree. You can see the bowl right here where the top was cut, and then he pulled it back. As it starts to fall, you can start pulling on it to control where the top will fall. You can see out here we've got with the sign stopping traffic if need be, depending on how close we were. Right here you can see the mailbox happens to be open right here. 3 different times I went and shut that. He opened it up with top coming down 3 different times, just brushed it, but didn't do any damage to the mailbox. And we had the city workers helped out with sometime. We did a couple things in the bucket where they did some pre-removal, and then also we're out there helping direct traffic and then cleaning off the road here as well. Lost my, oh, there it is. You can see the head dangling back here. Here's a tree that the top was just cut off of. And you can see this pull down here. Typically when we see this in the woods, it's not a good thing. But out here, what it means is that it was hanging on and it controlled the fall as it was coming down, and there was some control to it, so that's not a bad thing. I see the question here about were the ash in fairly good condition. As we go on, most of these ash here were in either, a lot of this was preemptive or they were in the very early stages. When we get into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th day is where we got more of the trees that were dead. None of these trees along here were dead. And then there's a question in here on the breakdown of costs. What was figured into this cost was the bid put in by the logger, and then also the city's time. excuse me, any of our time out there where we had the DNR personnel and the Forest Service personnel, where we were doing time studies, and I was there kind of coordinating it. We did not figure that in. We figured the cost of the equipment and the cost of the city workers, which for the week worked out to right around $25,000, almost split evenly. And I shouldn't say for the week, because we also included city worker time for the next week to do some of the follow-up as well. And the size of there's two people from the logging operation part of it, Mark and Teresa, and then the city workers. We had three of them out there constantly, and then we did not count the traffic control people in. That was Forest Service and DNR people that were helping out. Here is yard. This is, I believe this is a 27-inch ash right here. I was a little squeamish about it. We had two shagbark hickories here. You can see some rod in here that were cut down out here. Mark had no hesitation whatsoever in cutting this tree down. I was a little worried that close to the house. Here he is cutting through in the process, and the top going down. So where he was positioned here, he had enough pressure. He looked at the lean of the tree. He was totally confident it was coming right out here, which it did. So here's what we did. This is the fewest number of trees that we cut down. You can see the diameters here. Had some bigger diameters. This was 2-yard trees that we did. And so, we basically just divided it out for the week of $5,000 a day and divided the 44 trees in. And then I see a question here. Once the tops were on the ground, and I will see if I think we got a slide that's coming up that'll show that, Paul. But it was all bucked up by the processor. They cut the tree down, they cut it up, and in this, let me back up a little bit. This whole day here, we were too far away from any landing area to bring the wood. So we had two homeowners that offered to take the firewood. And one was immediately just the next house over here. He said, bring me all you want. After we brought 7 trees in there and you couldn't see his house anymore, he changed his mind. And we had another guy down the road about a half mile was the farthest we had to go with any of them to him. And he had a big area, and all the rest of the trees went to him. I think 37 trees went down to him. So this all went for firewood. We weren't concerned at all about logs or pulpwood or anything here. It was just cutting the trees down and getting rid of them, because we didn't want to go 3 miles down a road to bring product to a staging area. Liability insurance, we took out event insurance on this. The logger himself had insurance coverage. We talked to his carrier ahead of time, and the city, we checked with their attorney. We had to provide documentation from the insurance companies that we were indeed covered. And I guess the question here was, the firewood capable of producing EAB? I'm not sure what that question is. If it's, we had it was all right in the same area where these trees were. that the firewood was brought. It was going to be used. Rebecca had talked to the homeowners. It was going to be all used, not only within the quarantine area, but right in that area within a half-mile of where it was cut. This was not a commercial firewood operation that these trees went to. Day 3 is when we moved to the industrial park, and Peterbilt had an office here, and they had this graveled area back here which was just perfect for what we wanted to do. So they had areas like this. This area over here was not a big concern, but this is the place where we brought all the trees in this area where they were cut within the industrial park. And here's the forwarder feeding the chipper right here. This is a pile of the saw logs right here. Just more of the feeding. Back up here. This was, Vermeer brought this chipper in to just demonstrate what it was capable of. They asked us to throw some bigger pieces in just to see how it could handle it. So for the most part, we were putting tops in, but we did throw some of these bigger pieces in as well. And then this was a mulching operation that provided the trailer to Enercon to fill up. That we just gave the chips away for that. It didn't work out to do this throughout the week. We were hoping that it would go the whole week, but we only had one trailer load that went out. And then in the end, the chips ended up being we sold, or a guy took them off our hands, and I think he just piled them. I'm not sure if he used them for mulch in the end, but one of the local contractors, we actually paid a fee to get rid of them. We did have a biomass energy plant that offered to take them, but when we looked at the logistics, it was, I believe, 180 miles away. And the logistics of doing everything, it was just not worth it. So we ended up not, except for that one load that went out for mulch, we did not end up utilizing the chips. And we have two employees of. We got a state employee here and we got a federal employee here trying to figure out, well, you get the picture. And then this is the yard in front of Peterbilt, and this is we had a workshop where we brought people in, and this is where we ended up. I left these 6 trees out in front so they could see this processor actually cutting them down, and just did an excellent job here. One of the trees he cut down, and I didn't get a good shot of it. There was another tree where he cut the top off, and it looked to me like it was going to go right into the office. And he cut it and pulled it back, and it didn't even come within 20 feet of the office. He was just a master of knowing what he could do. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said, well, if it was 2 inches bigger in diameter, I would not have been able to do that. But he said, I know what my machine is capable of. And the question there on selling the logs, I will get into at the end. I do have slides on that. And here just showing the tree down as he's cutting it. And what we did on this day is, this was, we had a mix on the 10th where we were doing some trees out in front of the office. We did some trees along the road, and then we also had the woodlot trees. So it was a mix that we had going on in here. I keep losing my pointer. Here we go. So we had a total of 83 trees that were above 5 inches, 38 that were below. You can see the numbers up here, the sizes. So, you know, just figuring the 83, and that's what we came up with a price. And you can see the hazards here. And one of the things that both Mark and Teresa said is they were very glad to get into this type of situation on the third day. They said the first 2 days were kind of nerve-wracking, that they had the traffic issues to deal with, and there were just a lot of side issues where when they could get into cutting these trees down in more of a wooded situation, it just relieved a lot of pressure from them, and they said it was good to break up the week that way. And then on the 11th, we had a number of different situations where, again, we had the same mix as on the 10th. This was actually within a compound around a machine shop. So he was able, there's only probably like 5 feet in here between the tree and the fence, and Mark was able to get the head in there and direct it and push this tree away from the fence when it was felled. So all of this, you know, there was a question earlier, all of this, the way it's cut up, everything, that is all by the processor head. Everything was cut up by the processor. There was no chainsaw work at all once it hit the ground. We will get to another slide that shows where we did have a chainsaw fell one tree. And then this is just showing trees that were cut down from here to here alongside. This is an industrial parkway right here. And forwarding the pulpwood down the road, she would just go and sometimes sort it out by products. Sometimes if there's just a few logs, she'd pile it in with this and then sort it out when she got to the landing. Here's where Mark was not comfortable felling this tree on his own. Ken Lallemont, who his company was, who we did the grant through, did the open face notch here. And then what Mark did was, once Ken had it all set up and did the release cut, Mark put some pressure on it to make sure it went, instead of putting a whole bunch of wedges in it. We had the machine right there, so we used the machine to push on the tree to directionally fell it in accordance with the notch that Ken had put into it. And here's another tree that you can see. This tree is in the process of going over. This is another tree right here that Mark was not comfortable cutting down. I'm not sure why we didn't have Ken do it, but this is another one. I said there was 3 during the week. This is another one of those that we did not cut. And this is just cleaning up everything alongside the street. And then this is going into probably one of the bigger areas. The emerald ash borer was prevalent throughout here. There were quite a few dead trees. We never had any issues with the trees being too brittle and breaking up or anything like that. There were some in here, there were some branches that would break off, but because everybody was in the cab, there was never any real danger. And I see one question about the curb. No, with the rubber tire driving over there, to start out with, what we did in a few of these is we'd put some pulp sticks right here for them to drive up on to get on there. But then we tested it out in a few other areas where it didn't turn out to be an issue at all. Some of the places just where we had any concern at all, we would put some sticks or logs right here to drive over. The question whether there was any damage to the curb with the trees being felled, no. There was no issue out there. at all. With a open face notch, there's some control. It just doesn't go flat out, so there was some control of it coming down, but no, we did not have any damage. And just shows him going into the woods here. Some trees, just because of being open, they leaned out. We had to fell them out towards the road. For the most part, we didn't. We felled them into the interior here. And then, of course, had to come and clean this up. Shows the processor. So any of this is all cut up, and maybe that's one thing I'm lacking in here. I've got hundreds of slides. I tried to pick out the ones that showed this operation the best, but maybe I didn't get a good one of them processing up the trees once they hit the ground. And just showing loading up here with mainly pulpwood with the forwarder. And then this isn't anywhere near. It looks a lot closer to the building than it is. It's at least 20 feet away. And this was by far the biggest day here, where we did over 200 trees, 216 trees. Street and buildings for hazard here, fence and building, and then 141 trees out there, and more of the wooded situation. And then on the 12th was just kind of a wrap-up day. It was on Friday, where there was just this last small area that they wanted cleaned up, and we went in and did that, and got everything wrapped up and got the equipment out of there by noon. So the 12th was more of a cleanup day. It wasn't a heavy production day at all. And then here's just looking at some numbers from the 8th, where we did some time studies, tried to break this down. You know, when we looked at the total minutes here, averaging 1.7 minutes for felling, 22.1 minutes for bucking up, and then 7 minutes for moving in between. So I'm not sure what else to point out on here, but if you look at it, the actual operating time is very small compared to, you know, the entire day out there cutting. So there is only 2 hours and 10 minutes of actual operating time, and over here you've got 3.2 minutes average per tree. And this is in one of those days where we had the bigger trees. We're dealing with the street trees and that recycling center and that sort of thing. And then looking then on Elm Road, you know, 111 minutes. There was a lot more downtime here because we were right on that street the whole day. So, you know, because of traffic, if there was ever a question, we would stop and let the traffic go by. We just didn't want to take any chances at all. So out of an 8-hour day, we were looking at less than 2 hours of actual operating time. And this is looking at the processor. The forwarder was going because it had to deliver things a little farther away, and it was operating a lot more often than the processor was. But, you know, in the other 6 hours, he wasn't sitting there doing nothing. He's either moving the machine, looking at where things needed to go, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of hard to describe exactly the productivity, but it's just so you don't get the mindset that it's out there 8 hours just dropping trees continuously like they can do in a forest situation. There's other factors that affected them as well. And then looking at this, we're down to 1.8 minutes per tree when we're looking at a lot more trees being felled in more of a wooded situation. When you look at, we've got 45, 58 trees here that were cut, in more of a street tree yard situation versus the 156 that were in the wooded area. And then this, you can see where this went up here is there was some issues. This was this street, there was a lot more traffic on, and there was a lot more concern on taking their time and making sure that the safety factor was paramount and that there was no issues out there. So that's why we've got the increase in time right here. In the forwarder, average time to load 15 minutes, average time to unload 3 minutes. Travel distance, like I said, it varied greatly. Some of the stuff on the first day on, I believe, Forest Lawn Avenue, we had to get the wood out of there, so we had to drive it all, or had to carry it all the way back to the shop. So that's where we got the 2 mile distances here. Most of them were a lot closer. That was the exception. And this is looking at operational time. This is on site. This involved traveling out to the site. As I said, on Friday, it was more of a cleanup day, gone by noon. The reason for the 5 hours on the 10th is we had some issues right away in the morning with the processor, needed some repairs. I believe that was when we had a part that it was shipped in that Mark had to replace on the machine. So we had some downtime there. Otherwise, you can see the other 3 days here, 6.5 to 7 hours. And this is what I'm counting as operational time, is when the machinery was out on the site ready to cut the trees down. And that differs from the productive, when I was talking about 2 hour time, is when the processor was actually cutting trees down and not moving in between trees. On the 8th, sorted products, we didn't get a lot of product coming out of there. Some pulpwood, a few logs. On the 9th, like I said, because of the distance to bring it to a staging area, everything went to firewood. 10th through the 12th is where we got more of the logs. Some of these logs also came from the 8th that we actually brought them over from the city garage and brought them over to this area. So we had a total of 2,600 board feet that we got $604 for. The pulpwood, we had a hard time finding a truck that would bring it to the landing area, or the railroad landing area, which was about 40 miles away. And the trucking cost ended up eating up any cost or any income that we got from the pulpwood. So, but it actually balanced out where it was zero. We got rid of it. We didn't have to deal with 40 cords or approximately 90 tons of wood that was sent out of there, and we didn't have a cost. We didn't get any profit, but we didn't have a cost. And then we ended up just at the end paying $1,500. So then the total $900 is what we ended up with. If we were closer to biomass markets, the mulch, there was some interest in that. If we were closer to biomass markets, I could see this working. One of the issues is with coordinating the trucking and the chipping at the same time and loading the trucks up That was a major issue on how to coordinate all of that. Conclusion, the grant was tremendous for us to pick up some of the cost. We used the grant to cover the cost of the logger coming down, and then but also it covered a lot of the logistics ahead of time that we had. The city, that was not, they weren't paid at all through the grant. All of their time and effort was, the city's expense. Two levels of success that we looked at here: did you accomplish the project as proposed, and did you create cost savings and or generate revenue? And I think definitely on the first, the project way exceeded my expectations. We didn't really know what we were getting into going into it. We had a good idea of what could be done, but it turned out better than I had expected. And as far as cost savings, when I've been told by various people how much they have to pay for hand crews to come in and fell some of these trees, I don't think there's any doubt that there's a cost savings. Generating revenue, I don't think you can ever count on generating revenue. What you can do is count on getting some revenue to offset some of the costs, or to utilize some of the wood so you don't have to chip it. Like I said, with the pulpwood, we got rid of approximately 90 tons that we didn't have to mess with processing in some other way. Even though there was no income, there was no cost to getting rid of it either. And again, that will depend on how close your pulpwood markets are. The milestones we had: grant awarded, site planning. We changed the site, and that was the amazing thing to me, is changing the site wasn't that big a deal. Working with Anna and Rebecca, things just went so smoothly, and things just it really impressed me on how well everybody worked together. And we did the demonstration for the 5 days, did the workshop on Wednesday. We did a webinar that we did, I believe it was 2 months after, in early 2011. And then also we did a DVD. The second day, I forgot to mention that when we were on Elm Road, we actually had a film crew out there too. That was, we had a little time down for that where they were doing it. So we did a final report for the Forest Service, and what is next is, I hope this is utilized in more areas. I think it has a lot of potential on in a lot of different areas. We looked at a number of different sites, from river bottoms to streets, parks, yards. As long as it's coordinated, you can get enough trees to cut. Moving the equipment is a big expense. I think, and Mark was not that far away. He was only 90 miles away from Oak Creek, but I believe the cost, the total cost of bringing Mark and his equipment down for the week and paying them, which I think was probably too reasonable on his part, was $12,500, and I believe $1,500 of that was just trucking the equipment down there and back. And it's the equipment has to be brought on 2 different truckloads. The processor and the forwarder are brought in separately. The Wood Education Resource Center, I can't recommend them highly enough. I wish they had more funding to do projects through. They're very easy to work with. We changed from Beloit to Oak Creek, and we amended the grant. Didn't have any problems. We did have somebody from Al Steel came out there for one of the days we did this, and just saw what we were doing, and they were very happy with the way the project went. And it's not, definitely not for all situations, but it can work. There was talk of whether you should have a dedicated harvester and forwarder for urban situations. I think that's possible, but also you got the skill level of the loggers that do this day in and day out. And though they aren't doing it in an urban situation, they know their equipment and what it can handle. And the clearly defined work, we did not really have that. We didn't know how many trees we'd be able to cut. Come the third day, I told Rebecca we're going to run out of trees, so we went out and worked with some more landowners there in the industrial park to get more trees to cut. So we found out we were more efficient than I had anticipated. And like I said, the mix of trees between the street trees and the woodlot or mini forest, as I called them, helps break it up for the operators. And the biggest pain I had in this whole project was the product utilization. The logs was no issue whatsoever. I mean, if you've got saw logs, there's sawmills. The sawmill we sold it to was, I think, a little over 200 miles away. And we just called them up. They came down and got it. We had other sawmills closer. They were a little skeptical. This one wasn't at all and came down and got it. Coordinating the pulpwood, coordinating biomass, that's going to be the biggest issue. If you got saw logs, marketing them, I do not see as any issue at all if you have mills anywhere near that area. Let's see. Is this a duplicate? Okay. Cooperation, partnership, like I said, the partnership on this whole project was just incredible to me. From the landowners, from the businesses over here that we worked with. New Pages, where the pulpwood went to, Algoma Lumber was the sawmill. TNT, I believe, is the company that took care of the chips for us. I think they gave us a very good price. Northeast Forestry Services is the name of Mark's company. It was just a very, very good project to be involved with. We did get an award from Wisconsin Innovations Urban Forestry Award for this project. And advantages of the rubber tired, obviously there's tracked machines that you could not use in a urban situation. They can operate on streets, travel from one location to another, can reach out 30 feet, process a felled tree and make individual piles by products. Trees that are too large, as long as you can reach up and cut the tops off, you can make it a lot easier for the hand feller to drop it. And the operator, I've heard a lot of talk about utilizing the wood. If you have a logger in there, he's used to these products. He's used to sorting them out. He will know instinctively in looking at it if it can make a saw log or not and what length to cut them. Operating in the cab is much safer than with a chainsaw, and it also is high visibility. If you have that machine out there, it does attract attention, but they also realize right away what you're doing, see the trees going down, and it's not like a chainsaw where you might be waiting several minutes for it to come down. I mean, once that processor starts cutting the trees down in no time, so it's a highly visible operation. Removal and processing can be fast and efficient, and just the speed of the operation, like I say, you have much less time on site than you would with hand operation. Limitations, if you got wires through the tops, which is one of the things we ran into in Beloit, and if you don't have any room for felling or processing, that's something you definitely have to look at. And soft ground, we did not run into that issue. We had very good weather that week, but if you have a lot of rain, if you have where you have to drive on the lawn or stuff like that, you could have some issues. Safety, always have to be concerned about that. Like I said, that was our primary thing throughout the project. and the operator needs to be skilled. There's a lot of people that run these machines. I'd say there's 1 out of 10 that I would say I'd want to put into this situation. They have to be very confident and very, take them out of their box, basically. So we had a total of 515 trees cut for the week, and you need that skill and comfort level by the operator. And then tree size again, 27 inches, I think, was the biggest one that we cut. Anywhere that you don't have the limitations, because of the cost of moving the equipment, you want to definitely have several hundred trees to remove. If it can be a couple communities that pitch in together to do it. Conduct an assessment would be relatively easy to see if it could be done. It's, if you want to give me a call, I can walk you through it pretty easy on what you need to look at. And in some projects, it might be best to have both. There might be, if you got 500 trees to take down, maybe 400 you could take down with the mechanized. The other 100, whether it's wires or whatever else, you might want to take down by hand or with a bucket. That is my last slide. What scale project will they mobilize for? And I think I probably just covered that, but again, it depends how far you're bringing the equipment from. I would say, if you're going to do just street trees, and like I say, you're going to take a toll on the operator doing those, but even just doing 40 a day, I think you're still going to be ahead of the game. If you can combine it in with a woodlot type operation, then you're obviously looking at more trees coming out in a situation they're used to operating in.
All right, are there other questions for Don today? You see people are typing, so we may see some more here. Don, thank you for that information while we're waiting for any other questions. I'm going to bring up a slide that folks can look at to get onto our survey, and we'll be grateful for any information that you give us. I think this has been really informative. The more folks start having to deal with EAB and having to deal with the detritus that follows EAB, this information is really going to become more and more important. So I appreciate you sharing this with us today, Don. It's been really a good presentation for all of us, and there's been some, just in case there's been a little bit weirdness with the audio. We've had some big storms coming through here to Michigan right now, so that might be part of what was going on. So I'm hoping that is better. So, but folks, if you want, Don, would you be okay if I put your phone number here so folks could get a hold of you in case they need to?
Phone number, email, yeah, it's all good. One thing I was just gonna throw out is this doesn't have to be emerald ash borer. Just typical removal in a year even. You can, if you have bigger trees, this equipment can move in between them fairly quickly. So in a community, if you have a couple hundred trees to take down, even though they're scattered, I would take a look at this type of equipment. Yes, I don't see any other questions, Robin. And like I said, I'm more than happy. My email is pretty simple as well, rrsllc@sbcglobal.net. And I'm sorry, I should have had that on the last slide. I wasn't thinking.
All right. Well, thank you, Don. And I'm going to have the survey slide up here for just a couple more minutes so people can access it. But Don, thank you very much. You've done a great job. Thanks for putting up with the audio and getting that all together. I think you did a great job with it all.
And there's one more question I see here, Robin, from Brad. Do you think this would work for parks? Absolutely. Some of it, depending on how bad it's leaning, but for the most part and the size of the tree, I think it absolutely could. And if anybody's interested, if you have conferences or workshops or anything where you'd like to bring me in to do a presentation to go through what we did, I'd be more than happy to do that, or another webinar for people, anything like that. I would really like to see this be utilized because I think it has tremendous potential. It addresses a lot of different areas. The utilization is always brought up, that people that normally don't deal with selling products, the tree service people, where if you get a logger in there, they're going to know exactly what can be cut and what can be marketed. So I appreciate the time, and please feel free to contact me.